I'm going to give you just kind of a brief overview of the system itself, and then go into a few of the required upgrades, costs, and then the two different outcomes of the referendum, a yes or a no. And then I've got a couple of cost comparisons at the end, just to sort of hopefully put it into perspective, what we're trying to explain tonight. This is the service area for Sage Mesa, a lower area and an upper, what we call because it's in two different zones. So we have a lower area and then the upper portion. The authorization for the water system actually lists 249 parcels. So you'll see that referred to in different things. I know Al has it on some of his slides tonight, but we're using 242 because some of the 249 parcels, they're not serviced, they're crown, or they're unserviceable. So we needed a consistent number in order to do our cost estimates and to give you numbers consistently. So that's why we have the 242 for the residential properties. Some very high-level basics about Sage Mesa. It was constructed in between the 1960s and 1990s. It has a pump station down along Okanagan Lake. I'm sure you probably all know where it is if you drive by that area. And in the pump house, there's chlorine. So we do add chlorine into the lake pump house as it pumps up the main. There isn't enough contact time for all of the systems, so that's why the lower zone is on a permanent boil water. So it pumps up from the lake pump house into the lower reservoir, and then it pumps up from that up to the upper reservoir. The whole system itself is probably just over 10 kilometers worth of mains and has about 39 hydrants. Just to explain kind of who's who when it comes to Sage Mesa, because I know sometimes we get questions, well, who's responsible for what? It's a private owner, and it's managed by the Ministry of Water, Lands and Resource Stewardship. Otherwise, shortened as WALRS. So the RDOS operates the system. We do all of the day-to-day checks. We do the water quality monitoring. We look after the 24-hour standby, and we fix leaks, repairs as they come up. But we don't do long-term planning. We don't do major projects on the system. We're basically operating it. The regulator is IHA, who issue the permit to operate, and they dictate through all of the regulations on what has to be done. But just showing you a few of the pictures of some of the deficiencies, specifically the corrosion. We know that there's a bunch of corrosion on some of the pipes. The bottom picture there is what it looks like inside the pipes, corrosion of some of the older ones. And we know the permanent boil water on the lower zone, and then the intermittent one on the upper. All of the details on the deficiencies are available online on our Regional Connections website with the whole assessment report as well. So the assessment report was done by McElhaney, and it was very thorough in identifying the different deficiencies and putting cost estimates to it. We broke it down into sort of three main parts. The required upgrades have to happen no matter what kind of treatment ends up going in. That's one of the specific things in that is a new reservoir. The reservoir does need to be replaced in the next 2 years. The second one is the supply upgrades. And there's two different options identified, either to connect in with the city of Penticton through West Bench or to build a standalone treatment plant. The two options were actually only about $2 million difference. So that's why we're with the $33 million, which is actually the standalone option. The third one is the longer term upgrades. And that's a lot of the water mains that are aging. They're starting to leak. And we've seen over the years an increasing number of sinkholes resulting from leaks and drainage. So we don't want to leave these things to failure. We really need to be proactive on replacing them. So those are the three types of costs So I'll be referring to the ABC again here. So this is basically an outline of the costs, very high level. 33 million is what they all come out to. And it kind of gives, the first two are at about a 7-year timeline. Within 7 years, about 18.4 million has to be spent. The remaining ones, the water main upgrades, start in about 2034. And I have upgraded the dates on those. If any of you happen to see the report and my presentation in the fall, the dates are kind of 1 year advance. So, okay, so what does this really mean to everybody? So for borrowing 33 million, it means there's an annual debt that has to be paid of about 2 to 2.3 million. And the reason there's a range is because we don't know what the interest rate will be until we actually lock it in to borrowing. So we give a range kind of based on where we think the interest rate might be. So when looking at the maximum debt per property, there's a range. We don't know 100% what the interest rate will be until we actually lock it in. But that range is what it would be if the 33 million is fully borrowed. And that amount wouldn't be a sudden, instantly we're going to be up to that. It would be a gradual over probably about 8 or 9 years to get to that point. And then the estimated annual operating costs, those are what we'd use to actually run the system. We estimate 2026 would be about 1,800 to 2,500. That can be refined depending on how things all play out. So this is what the RDOS can offer as part of our utility acquisition. So in looking at the acquisition process, just to kind of summarize what we've been doing and where we're going with it, we have a utility acquisition policy that lays out the different steps that we go through when looking and considering a system for acquisition. We have to receive the request, and we did, and we have an agreement worked out with the owners. The engineering and financial assessment is the key component to really getting into the details on what's required. And that took about 1.5 years to do. So now we're in the public engagement and the assent vote preparation phase. And we have the meeting in the fall, this meeting, and then another one scheduled in September. And then it's the day for the assent vote. And there'll be 2 decisions. We get assent or we don't get assent. So if we do get assent, then we'll continue with the acquisition process. We will do up a transition plan and then start implementing it. We have to get various bylaws approved by the province. We have to get transfer approved, lots of paperwork. Get all the right-of-ways and all the assets. And then we would also apply for grants. The one thing to note is with an approved borrowing bylaw, the province really likes that because we have our secured portion of the funds. With senior government grants, they're usually a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. 1/3 from the federal government, 1/3 from the provincial, and then 1/3 from the users of that system. So by having a borrowing bylaw in place, we confirm that we have our funds. The province does not like to give grants for maybe we got it secured. So that's one of the really important things about applying for grants. We'd anticipate an ownership transfer, probably take 4 to 6 months, might be sooner, but I don't expect it to be longer than 6 months because we're already operating it. When it transfers, the private owner gets $1 for the whole system. We get all of the assets transferred, capital reserves, which apparently there's about 650,000 in there right now. Al would have the right number, I'm sure. And we'd also transfer over the water licenses, right-of-ways. The other option is, of course, if assent isn't received, then the RDOS acquisition process will stop. And there's a 5-year waiting period to have it requested to come back again to look at it. There's a significant amount of work that goes into looking at the acquisition of a system. So that's why the 5-year waiting period. So the water system would remain with the province. They would maintain ownership of it. But the one thing with the water system is you can't stay at status quo. There are things that has to be done. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to put an example together just to kind of show you what it means. The first couple of years, there's $5.3 million. I worked out that these projects need to be done 2027, 2028. So what I did is I kind of put an example here. So with the transfer to the RDOS, we would borrow the money at the end of the project. So 5.3 million would be borrowed in 2028. The cost to everybody, it would be $1,310 annually for that 5.3 million for 30 years. As we did more work, there would be more things added, but it would be the 1,310 starting in 2028. If the vote doesn't go and the province stays managing it, they need to collect that money before the project can be done. These are critical projects that have to be done by the end of 2028. So in order to do them, they would have to collect $21,900 from everybody in 2026 just to proceed with that $5.3 million worth of work in 2027, 2028. Just wanted to compare it just so you can kind of see what it means to go with the regional district and to be able to have the borrowing capabilities. That's the one of the things the province doesn't have the ability to do. We have received a few questions. Why approve the 33 million? There was a suggestion that maybe we only borrow the first part, the 18.4 million. And we looked at that and it's like, okay, we still need the other part by the time we get to it. So what happens when we get to 2034? We have to have the money available. We risk not having the sufficient funds available if we haven't started collecting the money. We wouldn't be able to borrow them. In 2034, we would have to have about $14.6 million available. So starting in 2026, we would add an extra part to the user fee in order to get those. And what this table shows is that the scenario 1 is where we would borrow the 33 million. You would approve a borrowing by law with the full amount. And it shows there kind of what the gradual increase would be in the capital charges. It takes until about 2037 to reach the maximum amount, which is the 9,056. These specific numbers are based on the interest rates from today. So it could be a range. This is an example for illustration purposes today. So that's scenario 1, the full amount. Scenario 2 would be we'd only get approval to borrow the 18.4, but because we still need the rest of it, we would start adding to user fees, which means 2026, we would be adding another $5,000 to it, just so that we could have that capital put away. It does get to be less at the end because we didn't borrow it, but initially it does go up much higher. So I wanted to just try and explain, try and get some different ways of explaining what these numbers mean, because it's a lot of numbers, it's complicated. So hopefully this helps a little bit.